Okay, let's dive right in. If you've been following the NBA at all since the playoffs ended, especially anything related to the Los Angeles Lakers, well, you know the big conversation.
Oh, yeah. It's pretty much unavoidable right now.
It's that massive off-season question mark,
Yeah.
finding a quality big man, a center, and according to the sources we're looking at today, it's not just a need, it's like the primary need.
Absolutely. This isn't just some idle chatter online. It feels like the main takeaway coming out of the Lakers front office, and it's directly connected to how their season ended.
In that first-round exit.
Exactly. That, lack of consistent size and production in the front court. Well, it was pretty glaring in that series loss. It feels like the number one issue they identified afterwards.
Right. So that's our mission today. We're doing a deep dive, getting into the weeds with the source material you brought, specifically this Yardbarker piece that kind of synthesizes analysis, pulling from places like the Orange County Register.
Reputable sources, yeah.
We want to get past the surface level stuff and really pull out the key details. What exactly are Lakers looking for in a center based on what these sources say? Who are the names being floated as, quote, realistic targets?
What are the, frankly, huge obstacles they face trying to get any of these guys?
The constraints are significant.
And, what does this whole intense search mean for someone like Jackson Hayes, who was just there?
Right. It's about connecting the dots based on this reporting. And these sources, they don't really pull punches. They draw a straight line, a direct link between the Lakers lacking that quality big and getting bounced in the first round.
Yeah, it's positioned as a major reason why they lost.
A primary factor, absolutely.
And we've got the GM's own words here, cited in the source, backing this up. It quotes Rob Pelinka from back on May 1st, his end-of-season presser.
Yep.
He said, and this is from the source, one of our primary goals this offseason is to add size in our front court at the center position. Pretty clear.
Doesn't get much more direct than that, does it? No. And he barely followed up by saying something like, we know we have a lot of work to do on the roster, and it will look different next year, for sure.
Which is a strong statement. It acknowledges, hey, changes are coming, and it sounds like center is priority number one for those changes.
Okay, so the need is established by the GM himself. But the sources also give us the why, with specific data, right? The evidence behind this focus.
Yeah, exactly. They break down that Minnesota series loss, 5 games, and the Lakers got outscored by an average of 7.1 points per game.
Which is significant in the playoffs.
It is, but the rebounding numbers highlighted in the source, those are maybe even more telling, pointing right at the front court issue, out-rebounded by almost 5 boards a game.
Wow. 5 rebounds a game over a series. That's tough to overcome.
Incredibly tough, especially in tight playoff games. Giving up that many extra possessions, it just kills you.
And the percentages mentioned in the source paint an even grimmer picture, don't they?
They really do. Overall rebounding percentage for the season was 14th, which, isn't great, but it's not catastrophic.
Okay.
But the source emphasizes their defensive rebounding percentage. They were dead last in the league, 63.5%.
Last. Seriously.
Dead last. Think about that. Opponents grabbed over a third of their own misses against the Lakers.
That's just giving away points, constant second chances. That puts so much pressure on your defense.
Immense pressure. It's a fundamental breakdown, and you have to link that directly to the guys playing near the basket, right? Your centers and forwards.
Absolutely. And the source digs even deeper, looking specifically at the center production after the All-Star break.
Yeah, this part was interesting. Over the last 35 games, the combined output from their main bigs averaged just 14.1 points, 11.5 rebounds, and 1.5 blocks.
That seems low for your primary centers combined.
It's low, and the source implies it was inefficient, too. When those are the guys you expect to anchor your D, control the glass, maybe give you some interior scoring, numbers like that, it just highlights the problem the Lakers are trying to fix.
Yeah, it makes Pelinka's comments about needing size make perfect sense. The stats really bear it out according to this source.
It's not abstract at all. The issue is very clearly defined by these performance gaps.
Okay, so the problem is crystal clear. Need size, rebounding, interior D, efficiency. The stats show it. The GM acknowledges it. Now let's get into what the sources say they're specifically looking for, trait-wise, and the big one, the constraints. What can they actually do?
Right. So Pelinka, according to the source, did describe the ideal player. The quote cited is looking for a vertical threat, lob threat, and someone that could protect the interior defensively.
Okay, so that sounds like, your modern athletic rim runner. Someone who can catch lobs, finish above the rim, and block shots.
Pretty much that archetype. But crucially, the source immediately adds a bit of nuance from Pelinka. He apparently didn't limit it just to that. He also mentioned being open to spread centers that can protect the rim and said he wouldn't want to limit the archetype.
Interesting. So rim protection is key, but maybe they'd take a shooter if he can still defend the paint. Or stick with the rim runner type. Some flexibility there.
Flexibility is good because, as the source makes painfully clear, their financial situation really dictates things.
Yeah, let's talk about the money. This isn't a team swimming in cap space, is it?
Not even close. The source lays it out. 12 players already under contract for next season, and the combined salary hit a whopping $191.58 million.
Wow. Okay, so that puts them deep into the luxury tax right away.
Deep in the tax. The source says they enter the offseason as a taxpayer. And here's the kicker. They're only $16.2 million below the second apron.
Oof. And that second apron, that comes with some serious restrictions, right, for team building.
Major restrictions. If you're over it or even flirting with it like they are, it severely limits things like using certain trade exceptions, combining salaries and trades, even the size of the mid-level exception you can offer free agents. It makes everything harder.
So it really ties their hands in terms of adding talent.
Significantly. And the source points out there are still moving parts that add complexity. The biggest one, obviously, is LeBron James.
His player option, huge number.
$52.6 million. Dorian Finney-Smith also has one, smaller, $15.3 million. The source kind of assumes, for calculation purposes, that LeBron might opt in at that number, though they note he could rework it, and they expect Finney-Smith to opt in.
Okay. And there are smaller pieces too, right? Like Jordan Goodwin.
Goodwin's got a $2.3 million team option. Shake Milton has a $3 million salary, but it's non-guaranteed. Small amounts, but they all add up when you're this close to the apron.
So if you take that $191 million already committed, and you assume, like the source seems to, that LeBron and Finney-Smith probably opt in, where does that leave them?
It leaves them very restricted. The source states that in that likely scenario, the Lakers would essentially only have access to the NBA's taxpayer exception.
Which is the smaller MLE, right, for tax teams.
Exactly. Projected around $5.7 million this year. Not a lot of spending power in free agency.
So that leads to the source's main conclusion on strategy.
Yep. The source concludes they will likely have to trade for the center they want. High-priced free agents are pretty much off the table unless someone takes a massive discount for that $5.7 million exception.
Okay, trade market it is then?
Yeah.
But what assets do they actually have to trade? The source wasn't exactly optimistic there either, was it?
No, it's stated pretty plainly the Lakers don't have a ton of assets, and it also mentioned they likely wouldn't want to trade key guys like Rui Hachimura or Austin Reeves.
So you take Reeves and Hachimura off the table. What's left?
According to the source, not much, especially if you're trying to land a starting caliber center. They list Dalton Knecht, their upcoming draft pick, mentioning his shooting as kind of up and down.
Right, 1.83s at 37.1%.
And their draft picks, which are very limited. They can only trade 2 future first-rounders way out in 2028 and 2031.
That's far in the future.
Very far, plus their 2025 second-round pick. So basically 2 distant firsts and a second. That's not usually the kind of package that gets you a prime starting center these days.
Especially with the salary matching issues near that second apron.
Exactly. It's a tough spot. So it's either make a trade work with those limited assets and complex salary matching, or use that small $5.7 million taxpayer MLE in free agency.
And the source specifically linked that MLE to potential free agents.
It did. That $5.7 million is money they can spend regardless of their cap situation. But like we said, it's not enough for a top-tier starter usually. It points towards maybe a solid backup or perhaps a former starter willing to take less for a year or two. It's a different path than trading for someone on a bigger contract.
Got it. So clear need, specific desired traits, tight finances pushing them towards trades with few assets, or a small MLE for free agency. That sets the stage perfectly for the actual names. The source brings up that list of realistic targets from Kobe Price via Yardbarker.
Right. This is where we get into the specific players, 9 names total. And the article flags 2 guys who've apparently been mentioned most recently as top targets, Daniel Gafford and Nick Claxton. Let's start with Gafford. The source says he makes a lot of sense.
And you can see why, based on the description. Physical player, good size, 6'10", 265, checks that box. Played with Luka Doncic, so he has experience next to a star. Efficient around the rim on both ends, elite offensive rebounder, elite shot blocker. I mean, that sounds exactly like what the stats showed they were missing.
It really does. And the source provides his stats from last season, which they call a career season. 12.3 points, 6.8 rebounds, 1.8 blocks, shooting over 70% from the field.
70%. That's the kind of finishing efficiency that lob threat Palenka mentioned.
Absolutely. Directly addresses the efficiency issues their centers had last year. The source adds he had 6 20-point games, 8 double-doubles, shows he can have impact nights.
Okay, so on the court, based on this source, he seems like a potentially really strong fit.
Mm.
But the source immediately throws cold water on it, right? The problem with the Lakers' plan to acquire Gafford.
Yeah, the hurdles are huge. First and foremost, he's under contract with Dallas. You need a trade. And the source says flat out there have been no indications that the Mavericks are interested in moving him.
That's a pretty big roadblock if the other team doesn't want to trade him.
It's kind of hard to make a trade happen. And beyond just Dallas maybe not wanting to trade him at all, the source brings up other issues.
Like what?
His salary, $14.3 million, is called reasonable. But he's also described as limited offensively besides finishing, and he apparently has foul issues.
Okay, so some warts there. And isn't his contract situation a bit risky too?
Very risky. He's a free agent next summer after the 2025-26 season, so you'd be trading those scarce assets for potentially just a one-year rental.
That's a tough gamble for a team trying to contend.
It is. And the source adds another layer, citing Price about the relationship between the teams. Questions about whether Dallas would even want to trade with the Lakers again, given the aftermath of the Doncic trade with their fan base.
Wow, so like organizational politics or fan perception could be a factor, making Dallas hesitant to deal with LA?
That's what the source suggests, yeah.
Yeah.
A specific hurdle just between these two teams. And on top of all that, the source says the Lakers would need assurances that Gafford would stay with the franchise beyond the 2025-26 season before trading for him. Like some understanding he'd resign.
Which is hard to guarantee. So basically, Gafford fits the mold well, stats look good, but actually getting him seems incredibly difficult based on this source. Team unwillingness, future contract risk, even weird historical trade vibes.
Yeah, stylistically sensible, logistically a nightmare. That's the picture painted.
Okay, let's shift to the other top target mentioned, Nick Claxton. The source calls him somewhat more debatable.
Right. He fits the desires, has similar qualities to Gafford, maybe even more versatile on both ends, and he's athletic. So far, so good.
But debatable implies downsides.
Yeah, the source says he's coming off a poor season and is not very efficient. And that not very efficient part clashes directly with the Lakers' need for better efficiency from their centers based on those stats we saw.
What were his numbers last year, according to this source?
10.3 points, 7.4 rebounds, 1.4 blocks. But the shooting splits are telling. 56.3% from the field, which isn't bad, but not Gafford-level elite. Only 23.8% from three, so not really a floor spacer. And just 51.3% from the free throw line.
Ouch, that free throw percentage is rough.
It is. He had moments top 20 points twice, 13 double-doubles, but the overall efficiency concerns are noted.
And like Gafford, he's under contract, right?
No.
So it requires a trade.
Yes, and his contract is bigger. 3 years, over $69.4 million left on an extension he signed last summer.
That's a significant commitment. And does that make a trade harder for the Lakers?
According to the source, yes. It says the Lakers would have to send out more high-salaried players in a trade for Claxton compared to Gafford. Matching that larger incoming salary is tougher given LA's tight cap sheet.
So they might have to include players they'd rather keep or multiple guys just to make the math work.
Exactly. The source does mention his contract is descending, meaning it goes down each year, which helps a little, but it's still a bigger initial salary to match. So Claxton fits the physical profile, maybe more versatile, but questions about efficiency and a more difficult trade structure.
Okay, let's move away from those potentially complex, asset-heavy trades for a second. The list includes Clint Capella, and he's different, right? He's a free agent.
Correct. Unrestricted free agent this summer, which opens up that other path we talked about.
Using the taxpayer MLE, that $5.7 million.
That seems to be the implication. Avoids trading assets, but the source offers caveats on Capella himself. He's been in decline over the past several seasons and is very limited offensively.
Okay, so not exactly hitting his peak, but does he fit the needs?
The source says he still fits the mold, calls him a monster on the boards and an elite shot blocker. Those are key needs. But there's a qualifier again. He's no longer the defender he once was, so maybe the impact isn't quite what it used to be.
And he had injury issues last year.
Yeah, limited to 55 games with a hand injury. Averaged 8.9 points, 8.5 rebounds, 1.0 blocks in those games. Still put up 11 double-doubles.
So what's the suggested role then, if he's declining a bit?
The source, citing Price, again suggests he's still a reliable defender, especially near the rim, maybe a low-minute starter or high-minute reserve. But crucially, they state he's not a good long-term starting center solution.
Ah, okay, so that aligns perfectly with potentially getting him on that $5.7 million MLE. He's presented as a solid, possibly short-term fix or a good backup, using free agency money, not the main answer via trade.
Exactly. A good candidate for the $5.7 million taxpayer mid-level exception fits that specific acquisition path.
Got it. Moving down the list, Goga Batadze, what's the story there, according to the source?
Source says he's developed into a reliable big man and highlights some interesting strengths compared to the others.
Oh, yeah?
Described as more skilled offensively than the three players mentioned above, Gafford, Claxton, Capella, that's a notable difference given the offensive limitations mentioned for others.
Okay, offensive skill is a plus. What about defense and rebounding?
Still strong there. Called arguably a better interior defender than them as well, and also an elite rebounder and rim protector. So he seems to tick a lot of boxes. Defense, rebounding, and some offensive skill.
That sounds pretty ideal, actually. Any weaknesses noted?
Yes, one key defensive one. Isn't great laterally and gets exposed on the perimeter. In today's NBA, that can be a problem if teams pull him out in space.
Right, defending pick and rolls on the perimeter. Still, the interior defense and offense sound good. What about his stats?
Had a career season as a part-timer for Orlando. 7.2 points, 6.6 rebounds, 1.4 blocks in 70 games. Scored in double figures 24 times, 15 double-doubles. Solid production.
Okay, but he's not a free agent like Capella, right?
No, he's under contract. 2 more years, around $16 million total left, so requires a trade.
Is he available? What does the source say about Orlando trading him?
This is interesting. The source notes Orlando has several quality front-court players, so they may be willing to deal. That phrasing, may be willing, suggests it's possible, unlike the no indications for Gafford. His availability seems potentially higher due to Orlando's depth.
So, a skilled, big, good defender rebounder, potential trade availability, but maybe that lateral quickness is the question mark. Seems like an intriguing option presented by the source.
Definitely one of the more well-rounded profiles on the list if that lateral quickness isn't a deal breaker.
Okay, next up, Day'Ron Sharpe. What's his profile according to the source?
Athletic, 6'11", wide body, flashed potential, described as a load in the low post, lots of length, key skills, excellent rebounder and shot blocker, solid defender overall, again, hitting those key needs.
Sounds promising. What's the catch? There always seems to be a catch.
The catch here, according to the source, is availability in terms of health. He's struggled to stay on the floor, only played 159 games total over the last 3 seasons.
Oh, yeah, that's a lot of missed time. Durability is a big concern.
Huge concern. But the source stresses that when he plays, he's been very productive.
What kind of production?
Last season, playing under 20 minutes a game, he put up career highs, 7.9 points, 6.6 rebounds, including 3.0 offensive rebounds, which is huge, and 1.8 assists.
3 offensive rebounds in under 20 minutes. That directly addresses that terrible defensive rebounding stat for the Lakers' opponents, getting those back for LA.
Exactly. That offensive rebounding rate is elite and fits a major need. Reached double figures 14 times, 4 double-doubles, productive when healthy.
Okay, productive but injury-prone. What about his contract situation? Is he available?
It's complicated. The source says his availability is currently unknown. He projects to be a restricted free agent, RFA.
Restricted meaning Brooklyn can match any offer.
Typically, yes. If Brooklyn gives him a qualifying offer, QO, they can match. That makes it harder for Lakers to just sign him. But the source adds, if Brooklyn decides not to give him the QO, he becomes unrestricted free to sign anyway.
So uncertainty there. Could be RFA, could be UFA.
Right. And the source also mentions that since Brooklyn has his bird rights, a sign-and-trade is another possibility. Maybe if he gets an offer Brooklyn doesn't want to match but wants something back for him.
Sign-and trades can get complicated with the cap, though, especially for a team near the apron like the Lakers.
Very complicated. Could trigger a hard cap, which would be really tough for them. So lots of potential pathways, none of them simple.
But didn't the source mention the Lakers were already interested in him?
Yes, this is key. It says the Lakers reportedly attempted to swing a deal for the UNC product at the trade deadline, citing Eric Slater of Clutch Points.
So they tried to get him just a few months ago. That suggests they really like his profile, despite the injury history and contract complexity.
It definitely adds weight to him being a realistic target in their eyes. They see the potential fit. So, high potential, good production rate, major durability questions, complex contract, but known prior interest.
Okay, let's keep moving. Jericho Sims. What's his deal, according to the source?
Described as a bruiser. Excels on defense and the glass, offensively. Finishes well near the hoop. mostly dunks, but a non-factor otherwise. Shot blocking is good, not elite.
So maybe not the top-tier rim protector, but solid D and rebounding. What about getting him?
This one's simple. He's an unrestricted free agent, free to sign anywhere, and the source expects he'll likely be had for the veteran minimum.
Okay. So very different acquisition path. Cheap free agent.
Exactly. And like Sharp, the source notes prior Lakers interest. They were reportedly interested before the Knicks traded him to Milwaukee at the deadline. And it connects this to Pelinka's own words, quoting Dave McMenamin, who said Sims would fit the stuff around the margins category Pelinka talked about exploring.
Right. Pelinka mentioned the center market being very dry, so they might need to look at those kinds of players.
Exactly. So Sims seems positioned by the source as that type, a low-cost, potentially lower-ceiling guy you grab for depth if the bigger targets don't work out. Fits the need for size rebounding at a minimum price, even with offensive limits and non-elite shot blocking.
Makes sense. Okay, next. Luke Cornett.
Source calls him a pro's pro. Not flashy, lacks an overwhelming skill set, but works hard and has excellent size.
What are his strengths?
Outstanding offensive rebounder and shot blocker, and a solid defender overall. Notice outstanding offensive rebounder, again hitting that specific Laker need.
Yeah, that keeps coming up. And efficiency.
The source highlights he's been extremely efficient over the last 3 seasons. His stats last year, 6.0 points, 5.3 rebounds, 1.0 block in 73 games.
Okay, solid backup numbers.
And the efficiency stat the source pulls out is striking. 65.4% field goal percentage over 5 years with Boston.
Wow, that's really efficient. Addresses that lack of efficiency from Lakers centers last year.
Absolutely. And like Sims, his status is easy. Unrestricted free agent, and likely a cheap one at that. Another potential minimum or near minimum guy.
So similar category to Sims, low cost, fits some needs, rebounding, efficiency, shot blocking, maybe fits that margins idea.
Seems like it, yeah. Doesn't have the hype, but provides specific skills at a likely low price point.
All right, 2 more unrestricted free agents mentioned in the sources list. Larry Nance Jr. first. Starts with an injury note.
Yeah, his season was cut short by a knee fracture. Source says it's unknown if he will miss any time this upcoming season, but he was productive in the 24 games he played before that.
How does he fit the center profile?
Source says he's a bit undersized as a center, also not an elite rebounder or shot blocker, so maybe not a perfect fit for the primary needs, but he's still extremely athletic and a solid offensive rebounder. And here's something different. The source says he would give the Lakers a floor spacer.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Most of these other guys haven't been described as shooters.
Right. So Nance brings that element, plus athleticism and some offensive rebounding. The source also mentions his history, played for the Lakers before, familiarity,
And acquisition.
unrestricted free agent, expected to cost little. So another potentially cheap option, brings floor spacing and athleticism, but maybe less ideal size and rim protection.
Gotcha. And the last UFA on the list? Precious Akiowa.
Source calls him another intriguing prospect. Highlights. Boasts a high motor. Excels on the glass and defensively. High motor, great on the glass, sounds good.
Weaknesses.
Non-factor offensively, and not a great shot blocker. So again, maybe not hitting that elite rim protection need Pelinka mentioned.
What did his stats look like?
Averaged 6.6 points, 5.6 boards in about 21 minutes over 57 games. Scored in double figures 15 times. Clearly an unrestricted free agent.
So another high-energy defensive beer-bounding guy available via free agency, likely cheap, but with offensive limits, and maybe not the elite shot blocking.
Seems to be that type of profile presented.
Okay, that covers the bulk of the list. The source wraps up with Naz Reid, but it sounds like that's a long shot.
A very long shot based on the source. He has a player option for 2025-26.
And the source says he's expected to decline it.
Reportedly, yes. He's expected to decline it.
Which means,
according to the source, he will be way too expensive for the Lakers to sign as a free agent, or likely even acquire via a standard trade given their cap constraints.
so is there any path?
The only path mentioned in the source is theoretical. He could decline the option and then work out a sign-and-trade with Minnesota.
But we already talked about how hard sign-and trades are for the Lakers right now. Near the apron triggers a hard cap.
Exactly. Incredibly difficult to pull off for an expensive player like Reed would likely be. So while he's a great player, the source basically frames him as highly improbable unless something very complex and unexpected happens.
Man, that's quite a list.
Mm-hmm.
A whole range of options presented by the source trades needing assets like Gafford, Claxton, Batadze, Sharp, free agents for the MLE or minimum like Capella, Sims, Cornett, Nance, Akiowa, and the long shot read, each one with pros, cons, and significant hurdles.
Definitely no easy answers presented there. And this brings us back to that question the source itself raises. With all this focus on finding an upgrade, what does it mean for Jackson Hayes?
Right, he played backup minutes last year, now he's an unrestricted free agent too. How does the source evaluate him against these needs and targets?
Well, it acknowledges he does possess some of the qualities they want, specifically calls out the vertical threat aspect.
Hmm.
He can definitely play above the rim, catch lobs.
Okay, so he fits that part of Plinka's description.
He does. But the source immediately follows up by saying, in their assessment, he is not as talented as some of the players listed above. And specifically on the key needs, it says he does not possess elite-level rim protection or rebounding skills.
Ah, so he has the athleticism, the lob threat, but not the elite defense and rebounding that the stats showed they desperately need.
That's the assessment presented in the source, yeah. He doesn't solve those core problems as well as some other potential targets might.
So what's the potential future role for him then, according to the source? Is he just out?
Not necessarily. The source suggests that even if the Lakers get an upgrade center from this list, Hayes could have a role with the team as a backup or emergency center.
Okay, so maybe not the starter, maybe not even the primary backup, but potentially still on the roster for depth if he comes back cheap.
That seems to be the possibility presented. His athleticism has value, but based on the source's view of the Lakers' specific needs, elite rebounding defense, he's probably not seen as the main solution, more like a depth piece.
Makes sense. The source article then wraps things up with the analyst's own take, right?
Yeah.
Including a thought about maybe getting two guys.
Yeah, the source mentions the author's final thought that the Lakers might be able to afford two players depending on the route they take, trade versus free agency. Like maybe a trade target and an MLE minimum guy.
Interesting possibility. And the analyst provides their own ranking of who they think the Lakers should prioritize from that list.
Yes, based on everything discussed in the article, fit, cost, availability, hurdles, the author gives their specific ranked preference.
Agreed, but with that huge sign-and-trade difficulty caveat.
Okay.
Number 2, Sharp. Number 3, Batadze. Number 4, Capella, specifically if he's cheap, via the MLE. Number 5, Gafford. Number 6, Kaboyua. And number 7, Cornette.
That's fascinating, because earlier the source flagged Gafford and Claxton as top targets being mentioned, but this analyst ranks Sharp and Batadze ahead of Gafford.
Right.
And Claxton isn't even on the analyst's final prioritized list of 7.
Exactly. It shows how the analyst is weighing the factors differently based on the source material they presented. They seem to prioritize the potential availability and maybe better overall value of guys like Sharp and Batadze, who might be gettable via trade, or the low-cost ML minimum guys, Capella if cheap, Akua, Cornette.
So maybe the analyst thinks Gafford, despite the good on-court fit mention, is just too hard to realistically acquire because of Dallas's unwillingness, the contract situation, that weird trade history, all the hurdles the source detailed.
That seemed likely why he's ranked lower by the analyst, yeah. And Claxton's absence. Maybe it's those efficiency concerns or the difficulty of that larger trade contract that kept him off the analyst's final list.
So this ranking kind of synthesizes all the complexity, the need, the constraints, the player profiles into one perspective from the source article's author. It suggests the most realistic path might involve targeting those potentially available trade guys like Sharpe or Batadze, or piecing it together with cheaper free agents, rather than swinging for the fences on maybe a better theoretical fit like Gafford, who just seems too blocked.
It's one interpretation based purely on the info laid out. It really underscores how challenging this whole center search is for the Lakers, balancing need, talent, cost, and acquisition difficulty.
Okay, well, this deep dive into the source material has definitely painted a very detailed picture. We see the clear, undeniable need size, rebounding interior D backed up by those stark stats. We heard Pelinka's desired traits, and we really dug into those massive financial constraints, the tax, the second apron proximity pushing them towards trades with few assets, or that small $5.7 million MLE and minimum deal.
Yeah, the limitations are key.
And we went through that whole diverse list of potential targets from the source: Gafford, Claxton, Batadze, Sharp via potential trades, Capella, Sims, Cornette, Nance, Akua via free agency, Reed is the long shot. Each with their own profile, strengths, weaknesses, contract stuff, availability questions, all based strictly on what was in that Yardbarker piece and its cited reports.
It's clear there's no perfect, easy solution sitting there on that list presented by the source. Every single option comes with trade-offs.
Big time. Cost, difficulty, fit limitations, injury concerns, contract risks.
Yeah.
Something. And it looks like Jackson Hayes, based on that assessment, is probably looking at a depth role at best if he returns.
The whole situation described is just intricate, a really pressing need colliding with very constrained ways to actually fill it.
Exactly. Which brings us to a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on, based only on the source material we explored today. Given those severe financial limits pushing towards trades, but the very few trade assets the Lakers have.
Right.
And considering the analysts' ranking, which prioritize guys like Sharpe and Bitadze over the initially mentioned top targets like Gafford, where does the most probable path lie, according to this source? Is it trying to package those few assets for one of those potentially available trade guys like Sharpe or Bitadze? Or is it more likely, given all the hurdles, that they have to kind of patch it together using that $5.7 million MLE and minimum deals on guys like Capella, Sims, or Cornette? And maybe the biggest question, based purely on the player profiles and limitations detailed in the source, how well could either of those paths truly address those core needs, the elite rebounding and offensive efficiency that the source identified as the root cause of their playoff problems? Which approach, based only on the narrative and details presented in this source material, do you think seems most likely for the Lakers, and why?